Hey guys, we're just going to give it a couple more seconds while we allow a few more people to join. Thanks for tuning in today. We're looking forward to bringing a whole bunch of speakers to you and some great content. So thank you very much for giving up your evenings, and stay tuned. We'll kickstart in a second.
Cool. Hey, thanks, Jeremy. Speakers, thank you for your time and joining us, and also for the audiences who are tuning in. Thank you for your time this evening. Let's maybe get started with our introductions and allowing time for other audiences to join in as well. Cool. Generally, when pre-COVID time, when we were physically meeting in person, we used to have a show of hands of how many have visited DOS or joined DOS earlier, and how many are new, to give them an introduction about what DOS is all about. But given this, we are kicking off 2021 today. This is our first session for the year. So a quick recap on what DOS is and what is it all about, and about our sponsors and also the agenda, right, to take you through before we hand over to our speakers. Quickly, so yes, this whole community was co-founded by Jeremy on the call here, and we all joined him through his journey to foster and build this community around Southeast Asia. We early started focusing on digital analytics, and it's now spreading across various analytics practices as well, not just advanced analytics, and it's across all analytics as well. You can find us on the meetup page, which obviously you would have RSVP'd and joined us through, where we post our events and the topics on a monthly basis. You can also join us via LinkedIn page, which is also active, where we post our updates and also share the event details for you to RSVP. A quick recap of our objective. It's an informal meetup completely run by volunteers like us. We have a full-time job and this community to manage, shuffle between. So it's run completely by volunteers. But still, our thought leadership team and sponsors are eClerks, Decision Science, Happy Marketeer, Mero, and Sparkline, without whom this would not be possible. So they keep guiding us and also, power us to run through the event. And objectives here for speakers who are joining us is to share best practices, share their vision, tips and tricks that they've used as part of their full-time job, or as part of their career helping their clients, right? It's more to share best practices, tips and tricks. What we don't do in DOS is obviously no sales here. There'll be no sales or pitches that's coming in here, though our speakers are from well-known companies and brands. They don't do sales here, right? Not taking more time, quickly on the agenda. So the first session would be by John from Intelematics. I'll do an intro when we get to the session. Then we'll have Ludovic from 55, the data company, Hong Kong, followed by a tech show of Increasingly Platform by James, right? Before we get into this, we have Sarah from Sparkline joining us to do a quick job advert that they have an opening in Sparkline. Any of you who are interested could reach out to Sarah and apply for that job. Let me share. Yeah, please allow me to share the job description, Sarah, and you can
Thanks, Harry.
Take the audience through.
Yeah, no problem at all. I'll just start while you're getting that together, and obviously don't want to keep everybody before diving into the sessions. They sound really interesting. Firstly, thanks for having us, and we're delighted to be a sponsor for Digital Analytics Wednesdays at Sparkline. I'm really pleased to join. This is my first time joining one of the sessions, so great to be here. I work on the HR and education side of things with Sparkline, and just here to just give a quick shout out for a job, so job opportunity. We are a boutique analytics consultancy. We're based out of Singapore. We do have regional reach, and we're growing our team basically. So just flashed up here, just a couple of lines on the job role, but please have a look at the JD. It lives at this link here. You just see there, or the Wantedly company page that we host all of our jobs on. We're actually looking for a few other roles in our team as well. So please dive in and have a look. The role that we're focusing on first and foremost is an integration consultant. So we're really just looking for people that have a passion for data, for digital. For this role, it's very much working with clients to integrate their various analytics tools and solutions into their tech stack. Pretty hands-on role. It's client-facing as are all of our roles at Sparkline. And you can really dive in and be part of a small but mighty team as we think of ourselves, and really get involved with consulting with some of the some really exciting brands. They're global brands, but based across the region. And if something like that is of interest to you, just reach out to me directly. We'll have a look at our jobs page here and just see what else we're looking at. As I say, it's a big year ahead for us at Sparkline, so a couple of growth roles in there as well. So please have a look, and yeah, we'd love to hear from you, and excited to be part of Doors for the rest of the year and beyond as well. So yeah, just great to have the chance to intro and say hi today as well. I think that was it, guys.
Thank you,
if you want me to highlight, happy to. But yeah, I'm sure the guys can just reach out and make contact directly if they're interested.
Got it. Thank you, Sarah. I'll actually, also post the link on the chat for audiences to use if needed. Right.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks, Harry.
No problem. Thank you, Sarah. Well, with no further ado, guys, let's start with the session. So our first speaker would be from Intelematics, John, who is a senior product manager there. Intelematics is a telematics company which works on traffic data, and not just traffic data, vehicle data, and also mobile data. They work closely with various industries, obviously around automobile, be it transport, research companies, government, etc. And what John is here to share with us is on how or why councils are changing their approach to understand traffic flow, right, and the data that they're using. John, handing it over to you to do an introduction and also deep dive into the topic. Thank you for your time here, John.
Thank you for having me, Harry and Jeremy. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, John.
Great. All right. So let me try to share my present. And I'll put from... All right, a little bit of background. I actually started as a digital analyst. That's how I started my career. And after a few roles in the government, some digital transformation, I actually got poached by a headhunter for a role as product manager. And back in the day, I had no idea what that meant. And I took the shot, and it was a really great opportunity. And I worked a lot around people's behavior and market segmentation. And I had the luck to work with Facebook integration here in Australia, with Microsoft, with Google. From experience side, that was the company I was working at the time. And after a few years there, Intelematics reached out to me and they said they had this amazing amount of data and they wanted to do something with it. And I was kind of puzzled in the beginning because, you know, my trajectory was from digital analyst to digital product manager, focused on data. And all of a sudden, they were reaching out to me to talk about traffic. And it wasn't until I had a conversation with them I truly understood the actual strategy they had. And it was quite interesting, quite exciting, because there was before COVID, there was already a revolution happening in terms of transportation, and COVID just accelerated that. And that's exactly what I'll talk a little bit today, is the impact of COVID is really changing the way the cities are designed and really have impact how people move around. And the expectation is that workers expect 75% of the workers expect to continue to work from home at some capacity, and 74% of managers expect to support that. And what's happening a lot across a lot of cities is what that means to our design. They're trying to rethink how they are designed, and there is a lot of initiatives of, initially was the 30-minute city where you could do everything and anything within 30 minutes walk. Now they're getting even more ambitious with 15-minute cities. And in terms of executing that, they need a lot of measurement and they need a lot of data. And it's really hard for them because people's behavior change really quick. And there's not a lot of data up to date at scale to help them kind of understand what's going on out there. So they have kind of main issues is access to data, either from an infrastructure point of view of the skills to actually manage that data, if they can collect it, and usually the coverage of the data and how timely it is. We look at our data asset, and it was really large. We've been running operation in Australia and New Zealand in terms of real-time traffic information for more than 10 years. So we have a lot of experience in doing that kind of data transformation, ingestion, publishing. So we start having a look in the size of the data assets, because usually they're using in real time. They were stored, they were saved, but were not structured to provide a proper service. So we start looking at it, and you know, the current kid on the block is smart things or IoT. And IoT by itself is quite challenging because it's really high frequency and really small bytes of data. So it can become really noisy. As you can see here is just a sample of our IoT stuff on the go. So it doesn't mean anything. It's just a bunch of dots. It's very noisy, very hard to use. The other thing is that we ingest data from a variety of sources and in variety of formats. So we have information come from emergency services about the accidents happening on the road. We have a lot of vehicles in real time that we got the floating data of their location that we need to associate to a road. We get data coming from traffic lights and sensors on the roads, and all this has to be parsed and make sense together. So it's really a disparate data source, so it's quite challenging. And the volume is among us. So 80% of the effort is really on the data preparation before you can derive any value. So what we're trying to do is make it really meaningful and accessible. So to give a sense of the scale we're operating at the moment, and this is only really Australia, New Zealand, we are covering like 680,000 kilometers, which is going to the moon and back. And we update that data every 15 minutes. We receive a billion data points from connected vehicles per year and 2,000 points per second. We collect 1.2 billion data points from IoT sensors on the road, and we update them at 15 minutes intervals. We process 25 billion records of speed, 600 million data points per day, and our footprint is around 2 trillion data points. So it becomes quite a big problem to manage if you're trying to build a service out of that. And on top of that, the feedback is that 15 minutes to give them insights out of this data is not really acceptable. They want that really, really fast. So what did we do was to design a really large architecture that starts from the left, where we have the different types of data that we're ingesting. And each of those boxes on the left have a variety of suppliers, sometimes more than 10 of them. and each one of them have their own schema. And we ingest this data from multiple ways, from mostly batch, sometimes APIs, and we have to bring all this into a storage and then pump into a big data engine. By the way, we had to build our own components for data integration because we couldn't find anything that would fit, and we made them open source. So for anyone interested, you can go to GitHub and have a look on our data integration component. And then what we needed was really powerful big data engine that will be able to push that into a visualization and really update it in really, really short amount of time. We do use MuleSoft for some SaaS application integration, but all the actual integration processing we had to build from the ground up due to the challenge we were facing. I think last week, Google BigQuery launched some big data visualization feature, and we had a quick look, and it could ingest a third of our data. So it's 3 times smaller than what we're producing at the moment for visualization. And we put that out in a web portal for you to explore, or we publish directly to the GPS of the cars. So what we got after our couple of years of exercising building that data architecture was we managed to crunch 6 billion rows in 10 seconds. So what you're seeing here on the right is our current interface. And you can even see this lump of traffic volumes on April 2020 when really the lockdown hit Australia pretty hard. And what we're equipping now the cities to do is enable them to really explore our data. One of the biggest challenges with the big data and the problem the cities are facing is that they have a lot of hypotheses, a lot of scenarios they want to test. So this idea of crunching big data for even for 15 minutes for a small hypothesis and validation is just become too onerous. And they need to be able to really zoom in, zoom out, and explore and test different scenarios to understand what's actually going on out there and what initiatives they can put in place to help them drive the strategies they want to drive for the cities. So we're being able now to help them answer, how the volume of vehicles are changing over time. Even going granular to a particular intersection to see where the cars actually turn and how many of them in intervals down to 15 minutes. We can tell them the origin destination of the cars, which suburb, where they're coming from, where they're going. And we can, of course, tell them the most congested and the speed on the road, on these roads. So essentially it took us almost, I think around 2 years to design this data architecture to then implement a front-end visualization port on top. And what we rolled out in the last few months was really kind of the core features that we think can help them do the exploration and really kind of figure out how they're going to re-optimize the cities and redesign them for this new reality that we're facing, where we're probably going to only go to the office a couple of times a week. So if you guys got interested and want to know more, please reach out on my email. Happy to have a chat and explain a little bit more about our background and the data we're handling. This is just really a quick 15-minute snapshot, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you.
Hey, John, thank you. That was a very quick snapshot, and especially the architecture slide that you showed, right? Yeah. So yeah, we have couple of questions that has come in here. One from me, John. I was curious on how do you collect these data? Like, what are the channels of collecting these data?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, there is a lot of different types of data and a lot of channels. So Australia was fortunate enough to start implementing sensors on the road back in the 70s. And they built a really, really large network of sensors across the whole country. This is managed by the road authorities, which are state-based. So we have a relationship with them where we actually build our own APIs and we put our own servers into their building to be able to extract the data because they didn't have the skills to do so. So this is just one of the sources we have. But we have, it's not in this architecture, but we have a machine learning model that actually interpret accidents from social media and actually transform them into data into the road. So there is a variety of source. It will be a 1 hour talk about the sources and how we handle them.
I can imagine. Yeah, thanks, John. Next question is from one of our regular attendees, Gaurav, and it's more on the consent. I think on same lines, and maybe a good segue to the next topic, especially location and face, which can be used for fraud payments these days. Is there any governance framework to manage this here?
Yes, definitely. In my previous life, I was actually the head of the Consumer Bureau here in Australia for Experian. Mm-hmm. So one of the reasons to change industry was the disruption of GDPR, and how hard it's being to manage that. Our case is a bit different. We received that data already anonymized from our suppliers. What means is we don't actually have persistent IDs for those vehicles on the road. They rotate. They last only for the duration of the trip, and the beginning and the end of the trip. They have business rules around X amount of time in the beginning of the end that's cropped out and not sent to us, that prevent us from actually knowing where it originated and where it actually ended. So it does end in we go down to a suburb, but we don't go further than that.
Got it. Yeah, thanks, John. Next question is on the type of data itself, right, from Ashish. Is the data type only continuous, or do you also have categorical data in your data set?
Yeah, we have both of them. Yeah, but it's a very large pool of data, and they have different applications. So we do have data that is, we have the probes. There are actually that's the location of the IoT device on the road. Mm-hmm. They come every 1 to 2 seconds, and the zillion of points that we have to really make sense of it. We do have really kind of the description of an accident, for example, that we have to transform into a code that's understandable by the machine. So the breadth and depth is quite diverse.
Got it, John. A follow-up question from Ashish as well. Do you apply clustering techniques, and if yes, which one? I think more on the approaches that you take. You can if it's not your question. Yeah.
I may not be able. I'm not a data engineer. I think my data engineers will be happy to answer.
Right.
We are doing some machine learning. I don't know specifics on the clustering methodologies, but most of our, as far as I understand and discuss with them, our biggest challenges are always on the preparation of the data prior to the modeling. And we find the modeling part is pretty out the shelf, but that preparation and how each data correlates before going to the training is being one of the things we find we differentiate ourselves. But I can't go really to the specifics on the clustering techniques, unfortunately.
No worries, John, no worries. Last question before we wrap up, John, again from me. I understand, the kind of questions you try to answer, like how does the traffic pattern change? What is the source and destination kind of flow, etc. But were there any action taken on that you could share for us to better understand how this is utilized by the councils? Like whether new routes planned or stuff like that.
Yeah. So one of the most common, the initial use case that we were exploring is because in Australia, before you have approval to start any kind of construction, you want to build a new shopping mall or you have a residential construction, you have to get permits and approval from the government that you do have a plan in how you're going to manage the traffic in that area. Because depending on the construction, you may have a lot of trucks coming there and some lanes may be closed. And that planning is one of the parts where the industry really suffered from lack of data. So initially, one of our first use cases was for applying for a construction permit to build those management planning. They would use our data. But at the moment, there are a lot of use cases emerging on setting up a pop-up bike lanes. And the government is testing temporary bike lanes to try to reduce the number of cars on the road. And there are use cases on how to project the CO2 emissions from the vehicles on the area, or project even the noise produced by the vehicles on the area to decide if it's a good residential area or not. So it's a lot of different use cases.
Yeah, got it, John. Yeah. could be even used for urban planning, right? Wonderful, John. Yeah, I think thanks for your time, John. A question here, you can take time and get back to us as well. You've had questions from Ashish and Gaurav. You can choose the best question that you would want to award the gift voucher. So we give away a voucher to the best question asked.
Yeah, it's a big responsibility. I definitely have to give to Ashish for putting me on the spot with the clustering question.
Cool. Thank you, John. Congrats, Ashish. We'll reach out to you. You can also ping us on the chat to give your email ID, and we'll reach out to you with that email ID. Thank you, John. We understand, it's late night there, almost it's past 10 out in Australia. Thank you for joining and sharing your, the experience around using teledata.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, please share my email if anyone have any follow-up questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, John.
Thank you, guys.
Cool. The next topic or the next speaker for us would be Ludovic from 55, the data company. Ludovic is head of expertise at the 55 data company. And 55 data company has a wider services guide starting from strategy to media to customer experience optimization. And given, the cookieless trend that's happening and also the talks around GDPR and privacy, I think Ludovic is coming in with a very relevant topic for our first session of the year about privacy. Yeah, over to you, Ludovic. Thanks for your time again for joining us and sharing knowledge.
Thank you, Harry. Hi, everyone. Let me share my screen quickly. Yes. Can you all see my screen and hear me? Yes?
Yes, Ludovic, loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. So indeed, I'm going to focus on the privacy topic and especially the role of technologies. So the updates, the latest updates and what's upcoming in the technologies regarding this privacy aspect and how we could face that, right, as a marketer. So just a very quick word about 55. So 55 is a data company. We're convinced that data is the most convenient way to develop the brand. And we're about 300 people with many offices in APAC, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Taipei, and coming to Singapore, which is a very strong focus for us this year. And actually, we're hiring if you want. So junior and senior positions are available on the website. And we're part of the Mr. Jones group, which is basically a brand tech group. So brand tech is using technology to develop brands, right? Just a very quick word on myself. Quick look on my background. I came from actually an e-commerce pure player. I didn't study marketing or anything, or even engineering in the first place. I joined 15 years ago. I just joined a company that was a pure player in e-commerce, and I just earned the job that way. And I found that data was very convenient way. It was actually the best way to tackle well, difficulties on the experience, on the customer experience, right? And so it was natural for me to join 55 6 years ago and deal with this topic for our clients. The way I'm going to explain or expose this update regarding technologies is through web technologies first, apps, especially the iOS upcoming change, right? And just give a couple of tips of how we could tackle these issues and actually make the most of this situation and embrace these privacy updates. So the first thing is about web technologies. So you might very well have heard of ITP and ETP, Intelligent Tracking Prevention for Safari and Enhanced Tracking Protection for Firefox. So these will, these have an impact, right? A great impact on third-party cookies, so advertising cookies. And I just wanted to give you an overview of this timeline, what happened over time. So it started in January 2018, right, with Apple on Safari, just limiting the third-party cookies. And then in 2019, it became a hard stop, right? You couldn't use third-party cookies on Safari, then on Firefox, right after that in the summer of 2019. And in January 2020, Microsoft Edge also blocked third-party cookies. And that's when Google also announced that, well, at some point they were to drop this third-party cookie capability. So just a reminder that means if you take a look at the this chart below, that means that on the website and on another website you cannot use the same cookie, right? You cannot read and write a cookie on another website. So that means that for advertising, it gets trickier, right? I'll explain a bit later the various impacts of that. And what we're looking at these lately, right, is also a stronger limitation, right, on iOS. So basically, if you use an iPhone, any browser, including Chrome, will not be able to use third-party cookies by default. And I'll explain later the iOS update regarding ATT, right? So the impacts of this third-party cookie limitation is about post-view attribution, right? It's not possible to do post-view attribution on Safari, Firefox, or Edge. It's not possible to do post-click attribution after 7 days. So if the user comes back after 7 days, it's a new user in Safari. Especially it's limiting retargeting, right? It's not possible to exclude an audience or retarget this audience on Safari and Firefox anymore using a third-party cookie. So you have to use other ways, right, to be able to find these users for advertising, right? And basically, what you can only do today is use Chrome users for audiences. And by 2022, that might very well change. So you need to keep track of what happens of the different initiatives that Google or, for instance, Facebook have today for measurement or audiences. It's still experimental at this point, so there's nothing completely achieved, right, with this. For instance, for the privacy sandbox is still a work in progress, right? So we just need to keep track of what's happening there. Also, the worst thing is about ads capping. Actually, it's not possible to cap your ads cross domain. So if it's on the same domain, you might very well be able, depending on the implementation of the publisher of that ad, to cap the ad, to cap the number of times a user would see an ad. But if you're looking at a very broad network of websites, it's not possible to cap your ads across these websites anymore. And actually, same domain capping on Safari is even limited to 7 days. It's very short, right? Even on the same domain. And besides technologies, I just wanted to also give a reminder of the fact that where regulations are changing, GDPR in 2018, CCPA in California, and actually in 2020, there's been many updates about trackers in Europe, whether it's in France, in the UK, in Germany, in Italy. It's upcoming in Spain too. So there are many changes in Europe too about the regulation aspect. And finally, obviously, ad blockers are also well developed, right? So many scripts are blocked, or just cookies are blocked, even on Chrome. So because of that, the third-party cookies is fairly limited now, right? About apps, there are also some very strong changes that are coming. The first thing is regarding Apple with the app privacy details thing. So now you have to declare what kind of data you're collecting in your app on the App Store, and you have to provide information about why you're collecting this data. You have to be transparent about what you're doing. And actually, if you don't do that and you want to release a new version of your app, then it might very well be rejected by Apple. Or maybe if you didn't declare all the information, Apple might very well choose to reject your app as well. So it's very important to do that, and you need to provide very detailed info. So this is an example of like a noted that we did for a client in order to provide some details regarding their app and make sure that they can submit new versions of their app. Another thing that changes is obviously the IDFA collection. So the IDFA is an identifier that will enable you to know which device, right, to identify the device that is used. So this is very useful for attribution, right? Whenever you want to attribute an app download, or I should say the first open of an app, then what we do with IDFA is that we collect it on the web experience, right, on the mobile device. So if you click on it, or even if you were shown an ad, we can collect the IDFA, and using this IDFA, we can identify the user opening the app afterwards and say, okay, it's the same user, so this ad had an impact, and attribute this ad view or ad click, attribute, sorry, the download and the first open to this ad click or ad view, right? So that's very convenient, right? But now it's going to be tricky because Apple will soon enforce ATT, the App Tracking Transparency framework, which is basically something that limits this use of IDFA. You need to ask the user for consent, specific consent, to be able to access the IDFA. And actually, you have to do it for each app. Within each app, you have to ask for that. So it's going to be much trickier to get access to this IDFA and use the data. And many companies actually, because there are so many, pop-ins, stuff that you have to ask consent for whenever you open an app, they actually chose to not collect the IDFA anymore. So this has a lot of different consequences. The first one is obviously on attribution, as I mentioned before. And what you can do now is using an alternative that's called SK Ad Network. So I won't get into too much detail here, but what you can do is use basically an API with Apple in order to identify the ad that was clicked before reaching the App Store. So you will only be able to do post-click attribution, and it will only be the last click, the last touch point, right, that happened right before the app was downloaded. So it's very limited. And the other limitation is that it will not be based on a user identifier or device identifier. It will be based on a campaign identifier, and you're limited in the number of campaigns that you can use. So that means that the granularity of your reporting, your attribution reporting, will be very, very small, right? So that's another way to display it, and that's basically how it works whenever you want to send, for instance, conversions to. So if you want an attribution beyond just the download of the app or the first open, you can also pass back some conversion events that happened afterwards. Again, it's limited. You can only send a limited number of conversions, right? Of various conversions to the API. It's fairly complicated also to set up, and it requires additional work in your app. Right? So I mentioned the attribution issue, but actually this also has a very strong issue about third-party audiences in app. So for instance, Facebook uses their own SDK to collect a bunch of IDFAs in other apps in order to identify center of interest of the user, for instance. Many different types of information, such as geographical information too, in order to be very precise in their audiences, so that you can target very precise audiences in the app, and also be able to match users between app and web. So that's very useful for them. And if they can't do that, or if they can't do that on a limited number of users because of IDFA limitations, then it will be difficult for them to build a relevant targeting. They're not the only one impacted, right? Many solutions offer audience targeting in app. And also the app-to-web campaigns are limited based on ATT, App Tracking Transparency. If you click an ad in an app, so for instance in Facebook, and you reach a web page, then you shouldn't use a user identifier or a click identifier, which is the way that we do trafficking, right? With Google Ads, it would be GCL-ID, for instance. Facebook, it would be the Facebook click ID, obviously. And you cannot do that anymore based on the ATT. So that should come in spring, right? It's very soon. And because of that, in order to identify users, or should I say campaigns, then you will only be able to use parameters that are generic, right? That belongs to campaign and not a user or device. So what you can do about that is two sets of things, I think. The very first thing that I think you can do right now is, well, you still can use third-party cookies in Chrome. So leverage that while you still can. And use in the media platforms the capabilities that they have for lookalike audiences, because the third-party cookie audiences are small, and based on the lookalike, you can get bigger audiences, right? And the second thing is that you can get back to contextual targeting, right? Stop thinking about precision marketing audiences, but thinking about contextual. Where is my ad? Is that on a relevant publisher? Is that on a relevant page in this publisher, on a relevant app of this publisher? And that's actually something that we forgot about, but we were using that many years ago before precision marketing and getting actually not that bad results. So we should try and re-explore that right now. Otherwise, we're going to be lost when third-party cookies are gone and when app tracking will be limited. The second thing that we can do is leveraging obviously the first-party data. So improve the size of your first-party data, of your own database, of your PII-based database, right? Email, phone number, enrich them with better information about your customer. Improve the data quality, right? Basically, take your bookshelves and make them in the right, make them in the right way, right? So that you can easily access this data and use this data. And rely on new onboarding capabilities of the media platforms or media consortiums. So for instance, Google has got this clean room ADH, and it should include in the future some features that enable you to target users based on a very refined audience. Facebook conversion API will enable you to send conversion based on PIIs. So for instance, these hashed PIIs, right? So that the data, the PII cannot be accessed, but you can still match that with Facebook data and be able to target, to retarget, to use lookalike audiences, right, on Facebook. So that's the two type of things that I think, two type of actions that you can take based on that. So maybe there are some questions.
Yeah, thanks, Ludovic. Yeah, we just pinged up attendees. We're just waiting for any questions. Sorry, give me a minute. I'm just trying to see if there are any questions from our participants. Cool. Actually, nothing at the moment, Ludovic. Let's just give them a few more minutes as well. Yeah, there it starts coming in. One from Renuka. Do you have insights on how to map users across different devices?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, a question from Renuka on, do you have insights on how to map users across different devices, more across device tracking?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, actually, this up until now, Facebook is definitely the company that has the best data about that, right, for cross-device capability. So if you use the Facebook pixel, sorry, on your website, you'd be able to report on that activity. it's still possible now. So, well, you should hurry, right? I mentioned that the fact that, well, the data is getting, will get scarce for Facebook in the future. So if you want to do that, I think it's the best platform for that kind of usage. But you can also use other types of platforms that have that capability. Also, obviously, if you've got your own first-party identifier, you can use that, especially with analytics solutions, whether it's Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics. You can definitely leverage their user ID-based reconciliation in order to get a clear picture of user habits. But I think the most important thing to keep in mind with cross-device aspects is what for, right? What is the question that you're asking yourself about that? Why do you need this type of reconciliation? Is it because you need to grow the size of your audiences, of the targets that you have for your media campaigns? Is it because you want to understand user behavior so that you can, well, better target them with, I don't know, emails or SMS? And based on that, then you would find the right platform to activate this cross-device data. Because if you got cross-device data, but you need to activate on a given channel, such as email, and you don't have the email of these people, it's useless, right? So first of all, focus on the question. So what issue do you want to tackle with, thanks to cross-device? And then look at the possibilities that you have with your own data and with the platforms on the market.
Got it. Yeah, just giving a minute more, Ludovic, to see if there are any questions. Yeah.
I didn't hear you. Sorry.
Cool. Now I just mentioned we're just giving it a more minute to see if there are questions. And the chat window would be open, Ludovic. So if there are any questions coming in, we can take it later as well. For now, I think it's only Renuka who has gone for the question. So Ludovic, we declare her as the winner for the voucher for your session, right?
And this was a good question anyway. So.
Exactly, cross-device, I agree. Ludovic, thank you again for your time and joining us and sharing your knowledge around the key topic, right? One of the most common topic, privacy, cross-device as well, across marketing operations. Yeah. Thank you, Ludovic. And with no further, thank you. With no further ado, guys, let's dive into our tech showcase session. Last but not the least, right? We have James, who's a solution director at Increasingly. Increasingly is a software that you can embed, or a retailer can embed into their website, which will help you or the retailer to bundle products and also enable customers buy relevant products. Ultimately, it's a recommendation engine, and it has few other modules as well. So James is here to demo us through the module and show us how it works and how it can be leveraged as a retailer. Thank you, James.
Thanks, Harry.
Thank you for dialing in from UK. Over to you.
Thanks, Harry. Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a good day so far and enjoying the talks like we are. I'm just going to share my screen with you now. Okay. So a little bit of an introduction to us then. We are an AI company that sits within machine learning. We've been going for nearly 5 years now. We've got clients all around the globe from all different industries. And typically, what we're ultimately looking to try and achieve is to try and provide the best customer experience that we possibly can for our clients. And a big part of that is that we recognize that customers are not always coming to you to buy just one product. So they're actually coming to buy a project, or at least they're interested in a project. So this includes multiple products. And to give you some examples, you're currently looking at on screen here one of our clients, which is called Bare Minerals. And with these guys, it would be everything that I'm interested in to do with my beauty regime, for example. For a clothing company, it would be everything that's involved in my look. And for a technology company, it could be everything that's involved in kitting out my new home office, something like this. And so the big part of what we're trying to do is, A, make the customer aware of all of the products that they could be interested in or are interested in as early in the buying journey as possible. And then B, of course, through UX and just in general, trying to make it really easy for the customer to click through to purchase. So that's what we're ultimately trying to achieve for our clients. We often quote a large American research company called Forrester that actually recognizes that there's around about a 10% opportunity being left on the table by not offering cross-sell or upsell promotions. And we tend to agree. Of course, this can differ from industry to industry, and it can differ from business to business within each industry. But generally, you know, we sort of see if you have quite a varied product range, so this could be anything from sort of 50 products or more, then bundling seems to work quite well because we can use a lot of data, and I can come onto those data and algorithms a little bit later to make sure that we are producing the most relevant products and showcasing the most relevant products through our bundling software to our customers in various locations across your site. And so what I thought I'd do today, just having sort of given you a bit of an introduction, is not to use any slides and just to go straight into a technical demonstration of what we look like and where we're able to actually apply our software onto our clients' websites. And so I've got a few examples for you here today. Obviously, we'll take a look at Bare Minerals, but I've also brought up an example of us on Samsung. So I'll show you this as well. And then finally, we do actually have a Google Shopping product. And if we have time at the end, I'd love to introduce you to that. My computer's taking a little bit of time to load, but hopefully that will pop up in a second. Anyway, we'll come back to it. But that's what I'd like to show you at the end. Okay. So I'll just take you through then where we're able to operate and how the technology actually works. And the first thing to notice is that we're currently on a PDP page. So with Bare Minerals, we're currently looking at this brush here. And if I scroll down the page, the very first thing that I'm presented with is increasingly software. And that's us here. That's an insert. Now, as I scroll down the page even further, that's where we find a bit more description. And this here at the bottom of the page is we actually find their product recommendations, or what they say is customers also viewed. Now, just a little bit on a differentiation between AI bundling and product recommendations or alternatives like you see here. The reason we like to be further up the page, of course, is for that awareness factor. And if you actually have a look at Amazon's PDP pages and the way they're laid out, they'll also have their bundling feature at the very top of the page. And then as you scroll down the page, that's where you'll see their product recommendations. And the reason why I'm just touching on this is because it's actually there for a completely different purpose for AI bundling. The product recommendations here are at the bottom of the page because as a user, the client is now worried that I'm actually going to migrate away from the site because I've scrolled past the initial item that I should have been interested in. So these product recommendations here are at the bottom to try and spark my interest again, to try and keep me on the page. So it's going to show items in the same category or subcategory to the original item I was looking at. Whereas AI bundling here is a completely different ballgame. So this is actually through a lot more targeted and precise AI algorithms and data. It's showing me items that specifically should have a high co-purchase probability based on the original item I was looking at. So this here is a lot more relevant. It's hyper precise, if you like. And to give you a bit of background, the main data sets and algorithms that we use are firstly syntax. So that's natural language processing, looking at titles, descriptions, that sort of thing. And then neural networks. And there are three main components to that. And that's firstly what customers are putting into their baskets and abandoning, what customers are putting into their baskets and purchasing, and then sequential browsing data. And so we marry those two data sets and algorithms up. We then hopefully prime it with some sales data to give our algorithms a warm start, although that bit actually isn't necessary. And then we're good to go. And we start producing positive results from day 2. And then let's have a look at exactly how this works. So obviously we have our main item on the left-hand side, and then we have what we call our bundle carousel here. And firstly, I can scroll through various items, and we can have between 2 and 8 items there. So it's completely up to the client how many they showcase. And then if I wanted to change any variables to do with the item, I simply click this button here. So I'm not having to migrate away from the page or disrupt the customer journey too much. I can select whichever shade in this example it might be, but for a technology client, it could be size, or for a clothing client, of course, it could be size again, but also color. But once I'm happy with my selection, I can go along and add the item into my basket there. Of course, we can include any star ratings because, of course, star ratings and reviews are becoming ever more popular these days as a metric to decide whether or not to purchase. But then once I've decided that I'm happy at this stage, I can then add my items to cart. And there you see, actually, this is the second placement in which we can operate our AI bundling on site. So firstly, we can operate on the PDP, then the mini cart, and then the checkout page. And again, the software is actually working in this mini cart in two ways this time. Firstly, it's looking at the items already in my basket, and then it's only going to be showing me categories that should be relevant to the items already in my basket. And then within each of these categories, it's only showing me the items, again, that are deemed to be of high co-purchase probability based on these items in my basket. It's kind of two layers of filtering there. And then again, if we wanted to add another item in at this point, we can simply click this button here to bring what we call a pop-out modal. We can change any variables, and then we can add the item to our basket and we can carry on. And then finally, we were going to appear at checkout page, and we're not at the moment, which is a little bit different to usual. That must mean that bare minerals might have turned us off for the time being. There was one other thing that I wanted to show you. If we just go back to the PDP page, I just wanted to, I'm going to try and show you what we look like on the checkout page on Samsung instead in a minute. But just before we go over to Samsung, one more thing I'd just like to show you once we load. A good thing to note at this point actually is that at the moment the client's web page is loading, and once the client's web page is loaded, that's when we will then appear. So we are a front-end JavaScript application that actually works by putting tags on site. I'm just going to reload this page again. So we're a front-end JavaScript application that works by putting tag on site. So there's no coding changes that needs to happen. We will simply fire once the client's page has loaded, and it's taking a little bit longer to load than I would like, but this is their product recs, and of course once the client's page is loaded, we should appear here. Whilst that's loading, we'll pop over to Samsung and have a look at these guys, sorry. And this is very much the same thing. So we're on a PDP page here, but with Samsung we're slightly further down the page. So of course they have a different layout, PDP layout to bare minerals. We would love to be at the top of the page for awareness factor, but that they decided that this is going to stay here, and so we will be as far up the page as we possibly can, which is here. And again, it works in exactly the same way. So as a user, I don't have to have everything that is presented to me in this bundle carousel. I can pick and choose. And over time, of course, the great thing about our technology and what our clients are ultimately paying for is, as you're updating your product feed, as prices and promotions are changing, as buying behavior changes, of course, these items will change over time as well. Perhaps not too much in the first instance. If we reloaded the page tomorrow, we wouldn't see wildly different results pop up, but it certainly will change over time. And again, if we wanted to edit an item, we simply bring out a pop-up modal like this, and we can edit any variables and then carry on our buying experience. We'll have a quick look at Samsung's mini cart then, and that's what this looks like here. So again, the software is looking at the items in my basket, and it's only showing me the items again that it deems to be hyper relevant. And as well as the data sets and algorithms working behind the scenes, we do have a number of tools and levers that we can use to change the results that the software shows. And those levers could be, for example, recency or affordability, because if you had two £10 or €10 or $10 items in a bundle with an item that was £1 million or €1 million, it simply wouldn't be the best bundle to show, because the chances of those items being sold together is not particularly high. So those are the types of levers and controls we have in-house. But finally, if I just take you through to the checkout page, we'll have a quick look at what that looks like for Samsung. Okay, so I'm not able to show you a checkout page, I'm afraid, for either Samsung or Bare Minerals, but I will send you, I'll send through some screenshots or some links after this demonstration. Because we've only got a few minutes left, what I'd like to do is quickly show you the new Google Shopping product that we have. And what you're actually looking at here is a Google Shopping Galaxy Note mock-up for Samsung. Ultimately, what we're trying to do with our Google Shopping product is to provide you with 20% more high quality traffic. And the way we do that is we look at your sales data, or if we've been working with you on AI bundling on site, we take that data that we've gathered there, and we take a subset of your best selling bundles. And then we put that into a Google Shopping feed. We then provide you with that feed and you will manage the campaign, but everything that you're about to see in front of you here is actually managed and done by us. Excuse me. So obviously the first thing to note is that through using Increasingly's new Google Shopping product, we're actually doubling the real estate factor. So not only will you see your existing campaigns, but now you'll also see Increasingly's campaigns here as well. So there's more avenues onto your website, potential for more traffic. The other thing it's doing, of course, is for a customer that hasn't even heard of your company before, they're actually now seeing a lot more products that they could be interested in before they've even landed onto your site. So it's starting to open up the customer's mind to what else that they could purchase with you. And then if we actually went and clicked onto the advert, this would then take us through to a landing page, which is all managed by Increasingly. We'd ask for one static landing page, which would then be changed to be dynamic for each SKU. And then this image here is actually created by us along with this. And again, it works in exactly the same way as a user. I can edit items by bringing a pop-out modal like this, and then add it to my basket and add in any other items that I'm interested in as well. But I'm not confined to buying the whole collection or nothing. And then I'd click through to purchase. And just to give you some sort of idea as the results we're actually finding, both with AI bundling and our Google Shopping product. For our AI bundling product, we're seeing roughly sort of a 30 to 60% AOV increase. It can be less, but it can also be more. I know we just did a recent case study for a DIY and plumbing company here in the UK, and we actually saw an 81% increase in AOV. So it can be really good. And with regards to site-wide revenue, we're actually seeing typically 5 to 15% site-wide revenue increases as well, by providing that perfect customer experience, if you like, or not perfect, but much better customer experience, rather than not offering the full experience that someone coming to buy a particular regime or look might be experiencing. And then when it comes to Google Shopping, we're actually seeing, firstly, the 20% extra traffic, and then we're able to increase conversion rates by as much as 42%, recent case study showed. So that's about it for now. I think I've probably taken a minute or two longer than I should have done. So thank you very much for letting me go over. And yeah, if there are any questions, I'd love to try and answer.
No worries, James. That was interesting as well to look at the bundling and also, how it flows into checkout. Yeah, while we couldn't see the checkout, we could visualize how it flows into a checkout for a user, right? Definitely, there are questions. We can start with the one from Bernard. Does the solution also work for big e-commerce players like Lazada, Shopee? So those are like the Amazons of Southeast Asia, James. So what is your thoughts here? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're working with a couple of clients at the moment that actually don't own any products themselves, and they sell through other vendors. So absolutely, for us, the important thing is that the sales revenue is above a certain figure, and of course the varied product range. So absolutely, we'd be very interested in investigating opportunities with Lazada and Shopee.
Right. And then the next question is from Ashish. Would it be correct to understand that correlation is used for pairing item purchases with customer demographics to propose possible recommendations? I think it's more on the data points that you use, or is there any other alternative mechanisms? Like what are the signals that you use to come up with the bundling and recommendation?
Okay. Well, Again, I can only repeat what I said earlier, I'm afraid. Otherwise, I might have to have a technical member of our team to follow up on this after our meeting today. But the two main data sets, again, are syntax and natural language processing, along with neural networks. And so, we're looking at what customers are ultimately putting into their baskets but not buying, what their customers are putting into their baskets and purchasing, and then sequential browsing data. And to try and expand a little bit on the point I made about having various levers, effectively, the AI and the machine learning is going to bring up results, and it's going to iterate on itself, and it's going to learn. But there's going to be a human element to the results that we might have to publish onto the site, in which case there may be the need for us to analyze the results together with the client in the form of quarterly business reviews, actually, and say, right, we need to tweak this over here. For example, you might have a number of variants of shoes, and along with selling other forms of clothing, and the bundles are showing 3 pairs of shoes and 2 other forms of clothing. It's not ideal to have those 3 pairs of shoes showing together, because even though the AI says that it has a high co-purchase probability, it might not do so. We use the exact data and sort of other levers, if you like, are unknown to me. That would be the technical members of the team that I'd have to comment on that.
No worries, James. I think that kind of answered the question. The couple of data points that is used here, right? And then a couple more questions. One from Chloe: what kind of uplifts in performance does this AI bundling typically drive for brands, and is it easy to implement? I think you kind of touched on the case study towards the end of your talk. Yeah. What kind of uplift in performance does this drive?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the question, Chloe. It's a good question. Thanks, Harry. It's, as I said, we're seeing typically sort of 30 to 70% AOV, 5 to 15% site-wide revenue increase, but then there are other metrics that we measure as well. So we do measure items per basket, and we're typically seeing that not across the board, but for a number of clients, we're able to increase the items per basket by between 1 and 3 items. So that's either taking it from, say, 1 to 2 items average to up to close to 4, if not over, in some cases. Avon, for example, I know we were really happy that we were able to increase their number of items per order by 1.1. For such a big company, we were really happy with that. So, and just on implementation, it's actually relatively easy to implement. As I said, it's tag on site, so there's no dev work or real coding changes that need to happen. Of course, there's a bit of back and forth with regards to design work at the start, and we'd love the client's input on that. But we'll come with our own designs and ideas as well, having done all the implementations and the onboardings that we have. So usually it's 4 weeks to implement, but at the moment we're saying it's a little bit closer to 6 weeks, just because we've had a really busy start to the year, which of course it is a good thing, but we're a bit busy internally as well. So
yeah, thank you, James. And last question from Asta: what type of recommender system are you using? I mean, maybe it's a question for your developers, but the question here is, what kind of recommendation system are you using in your backend?
I'm not sure, actually. It's a good question, and I would have to go away and have that answered by one of our technical team, if that's okay. Is there a way in which we could share these answers to the group afterwards, Harry?
Yes, James. I mean, you could share it with us, and maybe in our meetup announcement, we can share it back, or to Asta through our meetup, we can share it with her. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we'll find something. Sorry, I can't answer it at the moment, Asta.
No problem, James. Cool. Thank you, James. I mean, do you want to choose the best question from that you got? First one was from Ashish. First one was from Bernard. On the big e-commerce players, can you plug into the likes of Amazon? Next one was from Ashish. Ashish was a winner earlier, right? And his question was more on the data signals that you use. Mm-hmm. Third one was from Chloe on the uplift and the integration, easy to implement. Last one was from Asta on the recommendation engine.
Okay. I won't choose Ashish, as he's already a winner then, although that was a great question, Ashish. But I'll have to go with Bernard.
Got it. Yeah. Congrats, Bernard. Thank you, James. Appreciate your time joining us from UK, dialing in and taking us through.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, thanks very much for the time, and thanks everyone for joining today.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining. And before we wrap up, obviously, thanks to our sponsors who have been powering us through the year: eClerx, Decision Science, Happy Marketeer, Mero, and Sparkline. Happy to have them on board again this year, and looking forward to a great 2021. Thank you for all you attendees spending your time with us this evening and listening to three amazing speakers and very specific topics here. And also to the organizing team like Jeremy, John, Zach, and all of us behind the scene. Thank you for organizing this as well. Wonderful, guys. Have a great evening. Meet you all at the next session next month in March.
Thanks, everyone. See you guys.